3 and this is Stitchless TV, and today we are going to learn how to make this pretty gorgeous vintage style kimono jacket. Now I know a lot of you have already seen my video on holiday where I get the lovely Amber making her kimono jacket, but you've been telling me that you're finding it a bit confusing. It's fun, but it's a bit confusing. So I made this kimono jacket the other day and I've taken photos of all of the stages, so I'm going to show that to you today. This tutorial to make this kimono is a little bit special because not only do you learn to make the kimono, but you learn how I put the lace on the collar, how I do this effect where you have the lace inset, which I've done on the sleeve and I've done at the back. So you learn a lot more than just making a basic kimono. Right, let's go. So when you've worked out the size of your kimono, fold over your fabric and transfer the measurements onto the fabric and cut it out. Now, when you've got your rectangle that's been cut on the fold, you then need to cut a little scoop out of one corner that comes 3 centimeters across and then scoops around. This becomes the neck of the back of your kimono. Lay that back piece that you've just cut out with the fold edge facing the center of what's going to be the front of your kimono, and then fold back about 2 inches, which is going to become the facing of your kimono jacket at the front. Now, to cut the diagonal piece at the front, I'm going to turn it around to make it easier. You fold back where the top neck is, so it gives you the rough idea of the line you have to follow, and just cut right through that facing all the way up to the top shoulder. Remember, you need 2 of these pieces, so you're going to have to lay it out on another bit of the fabric, trace around it and cut it out so that you end up with 2 of them. Cutting the collar is very easy. It's just a great big long strip. Decide how wide you want it to be by folding over, seeing how it looks. Mine's about 4 or 5 inches wide and a long continuous strip. Don't worry if you need to join it because we'll hide that with the lace. Sleeves are so easy. Once again, it's a rectangle. My sleeves are 9 inches plus a hem and 8 inches wide. Now you've got to cut 2 of them. Don't forget to put a notch to signify the center, which will be the center of the shoulder. Right, off we go. Now we're going to have lace in the back of this one, so we're going to press a seam down the back so we get a nice straight line to help us work out where to put the lace. Following that line, lay the lace on top, and if you want you could glue it into place, but it is quite easy, and then just sew straight down one side of your lace and then straight down the other side of your lace. Now don't forget, you really must press this because then it will go all lovely and flat. Then turn over your back piece, ready for you to cut up in between those 2 stitch lines. Go all the way down from the top to the bottom and then just press back those seam allowances. Really press them back well, and then using a serger or zigzag stitch, just finish off those edges. Look how lovely it looks great. Right, so the next thing that you need to do is get one of your front pieces, put it right sides together and match up the shoulders and stitch one shoulder across using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then just do exactly the same on the other side as well. And don't forget to finish off the edges either with a serger, overlocker or a zigzag stitch. Now before we press the shoulder seams back, I just want you to do a stay stitch going all the way along that diagonal front bit before we put the collar on there. The reason why we're doing this is because the fabric's on the cross here. It could stretch a little bit, so this will stop it. Then once you've pressed your shoulder seams towards the back, you should end up with something looking a bit like this. Get that long strip, continuous strip that's going to be the collar, and fold it over and press it. Then we're going to get the lace and we're going to lay the lace so it's right up to the crease line of where you folded it. Using some Bonder web cut into thin strips, we're basically just going to glue the lace onto the strip of fabric, and then it will make it really easy to sew it into place. This is also a good time, when you've pressed it back, folded it over, it's a good time to tidy up all those edges and make sure you've got the same seam allowance away from the edge of the lace. Then open out your collar and fold it right sides together and just stitch it 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre away from the edge. Then mitre that corner so you haven't got any bulk in the corner and turn it the right way round. It's a good idea sometimes to stick a pair of scissors in, but be really careful when you're pushing out the corner. Lay your top along that diagonal front, but then you've got to flip it over so it's right sides together with the fabric. Now this is really important. That end of your collar has to overshoot the little V bit by the same amount as your seam allowance. So if your seam allowance is 1 centimetre, it has to overshoot by 1 centimetre, and if it's smaller, the same. Make sure you start sewing exactly where that collar begins and sew on the other side of where your stay stitch is, because we don't want it to show. And keep following the line of the front, coming all the way up. Now when you come to the shoulder, that's a very important part, because you have to do snips on either side of that shoulder seam, because we're basically trying to turn a curve into a straight line to make our life easy. And do exactly the same when you come to the next shoulder. So before you get there, do a couple of little snips, tiny snips on either side, so that you can open out that curve and just sew straight down. And then I want you to stop about 3 or 4 inches away from the next little V bit on the other side. Put the collar right sides together with the jacket and basically just measure how much distance there is until you get to the deep bit of that V, allowing for it to overshoot and allowing for a little seam allowance, and then cut it accordingly. Then just do the same thing as you did when you finished off the collar on the other side, where you put the fabric right sides together and then you stitch with a small seam allowance. Then it's totally ready for you to finish stitching back on to the jacket. Now before you attach the facing, you can zigzag or serger overlock the edge that you've just sewn. Before folding back the facing, you do need to finish off the outer edge on that facing. When you've done that, then just mitre the little bit of the bulk in the deep of the V where the collar was attached before folding it back, ready to sew in the same line as you did when you stitched on your collar, just like this. And then turn it round the other way and give it a really good press. you should end up with something that looks a bit like this. Now if I was you, I'd go and make yourself a cup of tea, because this is a good time to have a break. Right, now you're going to overlock both of your side seams from one hem to the other. Then do exactly the same to the sleeves where you did those notches where it gets attached to the shoulder of the kimono. I want you to overlock those bits too. If you're going to be adding fancy pants lacing onto the cuffs of your sleeves, before you attach the sleeves to the kimono, then you need to do this. Fold back a small hem and lay your lace on it just to see how far up or down you're going to have that lace, and then put a little notch to signify the line of where that lace is going to go, and then do basically the same as we did for the lace on the back, where we press a line with the iron to show where the lace is going to go, and then we lay the lace on top and we either glue it in place first or just go straight in and stitch it into place, and then cut away the bits at the back just the same as we did for the back of the kimono. Press it back, overlock the raw edges, and then we're ready to use those sleeves just as ordinary sleeves. Oh yeah, it is quite handy now just to press up that hem perfectly into place. We're not stitching it, but it is handy to have it pressed up at this point now. And I don't need to tell you that you need to do it to both of the sleeves. Right, so do you remember that notch that we made? Line that up, that centre notch with the centre shoulder, and I want you to stitch starting at that centre shoulder with about 1/2 inch seam allowance, coming down, and you're going to stop at where the sleeve finishes on the side seam. And then get your fabric, turn it over, and then start from the shoulder again and go down on the other side of that sleeve. And make sure you press everything out. You need to put your fabric right sides together now, your kimono right sides together. Now sewing from right inside where my finger is, which is about 1/2 inch in, coming down to wherever you want your split to finish, I've put a notch there. So using a straight stitch, you're going to push all your fabric towards the end of the sleeve, stitch around that little armpit, coming round in a kind of curve shape, and then you're going to go straight down and stop where your notch is, which signifies where your slit in your kimono is going to finish, and go backwards and forwards there to reinforce it just a little bit. Then going back to where you had started, which was right in the armpit, you're then going to sew straight down to the hem of your sleeve and go backwards and forwards to finish it off. Now when you press it, you need to press it in this sort of two-dimensional way, and the way to achieve that is you have to kind of cut in to the armpit to take away some of the bulk there, sort of snip in or cut a little section out, and then turn it the right way round and press it really flat. When you've done both of the sleeves, it's time now maybe to hem the sleeves that we've already pressed, so it should be really easy. All I'd say is sew from the top side of the fabric and sew right along where it meets that little bit of lace. Before we start attacking the side splits of the kimono, we need to finish off all the hem edges of the kimono. So now's the time to overlock or zigzag all of those edges along the hemline. And then when you've done that, you can start pressing back your side splits to whatever seam allowance you want to do, and then do exactly the same on the hem as well. But it looks quite good if you fold in a little mitre bit in the corner when you press back the hem, because it gives it a nicer finish at the bottom. All my hems are always prepared first by by pressing, because it just makes it easier to sew. So I press all of the hems, I press all the hems on the side slits, so it's all really easy to sew. Same goes for that front facing as well. If you just press the hem first on the kimono and then fold everything back so it looks all neat, and when it is all perfectly in place, then you know that that's going to be really easy to sew. You can start where you want, but I find it easier if I start stitching the front facing down first, which I do from the top side, and then just feel where the edge is, and then I start coming along the bottom of the front kimono, and then I'll start making my way up the slits, starting at the hem, coming up, and then pivoting the needle so I go across the slit, and then pivoting the needle so I go straight down to the hem, and I basically just work my way around the jacket like that. Now all you have to do is just press all of the hems that you've just stitched, and finally you should have something that looks a bit similar to this. Now it isn't quite finished yet. If you wanted to use the name of the textile designer that appears on the selvage, I always like to stitch it on with a little bit of a frayed edge. Now it goes without saying that you don't have to put lace in your kimono. You can just do it plain. You could do it long, you could do it short, you could do it with drawstring. This girl, she was only 17 at my last fabrications workshop, and she made a beautiful one with black lace inserted. And I had difficulty letting go of the fabric for this one, which was made of a pure wool cheesecloth. Thank you so much for watching Stitchless TV. Now if you make your kimono, you know how much I absolutely love seeing your results. So please go on, post them on the Stitchless Tree Facebook page or Stitchless TV Sewing Channel Facebook page. If you get time, have a look at my Etsy page, Stitchless TV. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, thank you.